Well, welcome to See, Hear, Love. It's Wisdom Wednesday, and the two very women who inspire me to be courageous every day are my fabulous co-hosts. Cheryl and Joanna, did you realize that was a pretty big thing?
That's
pretty cool. I know.
Let's see how those muscles
I know.
Can we talk about Joanna's fabulous lipstick today?
I know. We can have that one moment of like, right?
Courtesy of Cheryl.
Snaps, girl.
Those are always girls.
Yes.
Today, bright lipstick.
Yeah, good for you. You're
Fine.
stepping outside of the
She's being
comfort zone.
courageous.
I'll do whatever I'm
being
I know.
courageous.
And I love that we have Eryn-Faye France here with us. So good to have you here.
I'm so excited to be with you.
Eryn-Faye, we are going to be learning so much about you, and I'm going to gush about you right now. Because Eryn-Faye is a passion relationship coach who gives couples biblical building blocks, that's a good one, to make their marriages grow and thrive. I have learned a lot from you over the years. She's a recurring guest and speaker on radio and TV and in churches across North America, and she's an advocate also for women and children. She's an author and a blogger who has documented her cancer journey over the past year. Her blog is called Couraging, and it's honest, raw, and deep, just like our guest here. Welcome again to the show.
Thank you.
Oh, so good to have you here. Now, let's talk about this blog called Couraging. I've never heard the word
I love it.
Couraging. I love
Yeah,
it.
love it.
What was the genesis, the start of it, and why the title?
Well, I cannot claim credit for it, unfortunately, although I'd love to. It's a Brene Brown term. She's an amazing author, one of my favorites, and she talks about the concept of couraging. And she says if we're going to have courage, we have to do it through couraging. It's kind of like we learn to swim through swimming.
Oh.
Nice.
And so when
like
you
that.
use couraging with your cancer story, it makes sense. But why did that? It was like that's the perfect, blog name.
Yeah, it was because I was scared to death, obviously, when I found out that I had cancer. I lost both of my parents to cancer by the time I was 21. My mom died of ovarian, my dad died of brain cancer.
Wow.
So cancer, living in the shadow of the death, has been part of my journey my entire life. And it was like my worst fear came true when the doctor walked in that day in the hospital and said, "I'm sorry, it's colon cancer."
Wow.
How do you even react to that? I mean, here's just something where your whole life you knew that could happen to you,
Yes.
and now it's actually happening to you.
Yeah, it totally sent Eric and I for a loop. We had been very proactive throughout our marriage and throughout my life. I had eaten everything right. I was a big exercise fanatic, and I was really taking care of myself. So I had done everything. In fact, I'd even had surgery to remove my ovaries so that I wouldn't get ovarian cancer like my mom died of.
Wow.
And so I had been proactive, and then you get this news, and it just totally turns your world upside down because you think, I did everything right, and I still have this thing.
I want to ask you, I know we're going to get into sort of like deeper spiritual truths about all of what you've gone through, but I have to ask you, just to help someone else, what were the symptoms? I need to know. Like, how did you even get to the place of something's wrong here?
Well, I had what the doctors diagnosed as irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, right? So I was having sort of, my stomach wasn't feeling right, there was cramping, lots of,
Okay.
I won't go into all the symptoms today, but I knew there's something, that's right, they can Google it. But I was put on a very strict diet by my specialist, and my symptoms abated overnight. So he was like, obviously this is IBS because your symptoms went away. And I'd had a colonoscopy 2 years prior because it's connected to the breast ovarian cancer thing, and so the doctors were keeping an eye on me, and so they thought, you know what, if your symptoms are going away because of this diet, then chances are this is great. So we were moving forward in that direction, thinking that everything was okay, and of course it wasn't okay.
Wow.
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 Which is I just to admonish those, like, it's so important to get this diagnosed early.
Yeah.
And your symptoms went away, but I'm glad that you pursued and you were like, no, some things.
Yeah. Well, actually, to be fair, I wasn't that diligent. I ended up landing in hospital because I was in severe pain. I don't know if you know anything about bowel obstruction pain, but it's worse than labor. And I had 53 hours of labor and delivery, so I got my credentials on that one, and this was worse. It's horrific pain, and so I went into hospital just doubled over. I knew something wasn't right, and they whipped me into surgery within the next 48 hours to really save my life. At that point, in fact, by the time the doctor went in, my bowel actually ruptured. It just disintegrated on him. So that's where it's all hands on deck.
A miracle.
And it is a miracle that I'm alive. Wow. It really honestly is, because that was probably the most terrifying time where I really could have been gone.
What's going through your head at this point? Because you're saying this now, but were you realizing that or thinking that?
No, I was really high on drugs
Like it's all
at that point,
happening.
which was probably the grace of God, quite frankly. But my husband was very aware what was going on. We recently had, every anniversary, we have a dinner where we talk about the good things and the bad things of the previous year.
Love
and
that.
what we can do in the future to make our marriage better. And I said to him, what was the scariest part? And he said it was when you went into surgery, because I knew how bad it was, but you didn't know. Because you were on hydromorphone, they had you drugged up, you didn't know. And he said, I didn't know if I was going to see you.
Wow.
On the other side of that surgery. So I am just now starting to put all those pieces together now that I'm through my chemo and my radiation and my body is starting to recover. I'm just starting to realize the magnitude of what went on.
Yeah. Well, it's true. Like in the middle of it, you're just living it.
Yeah, you're just hunkering down, just trying to survive,
and
right?
there's maybe only so much you can process it in the experience until later,
that's
the aftershock, what just happened.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
It's like your husband, Eric, you know, with the blog Couraging, it's the same thing. Like you're couraging through your experience, but he's couraging through knowing what's could happen and having to live, you know, with you and knowing that, because that's scary too.
Yeah.
In fact, I would rather be on this side of the fence than his side of the fence. It was so difficult for him because he had actually just started a new job. He was within 3 months of this new job. There was a high degree of expectation on him. His work was just amazing. They came along and they rallied behind him, and they stepped in and they helped out. They were just absolutely phenomenal. But he was having to juggle work. He was having to juggle my care. He was having to juggle our 13-year-old daughter. She was 11 at the time. She just turned 13.
Wow.
And so just trying to take care of everybody's needs, that
What
was
an
a big
amazing
task.
man.
He's got like big shoulders, but it was tough on him.
So I have a question for you. I love these sort of like deeper introspective questions. So who was Eryn-Faye before cancer, and who is Eryn-Faye now?
That's a pretty deep question.
We're going deep.
Well done. I can say without a doubt that prior to cancer, I was very motivated about what I was doing in my life. It was much more about me, much more selfish. I had these huge dreams about my work and the places I wanted to go and the things I wanted to do. And after cancer, I do not care. I don't care about that stuff. That stuff is so minor to me. I mean, it's important to be fulfilled in your work, and I am fulfilled in my work, but my biggest priority right now is taking care of my husband and my daughter and loving on them. And my whole world has flipped around to how can I build memories for them?
Wow.
Because the recidivism rate on my cancer is quite high. I don't know the exact odds. You know, I'm kind of like Han Solo. Don't tell me the odds, kid. You know, I don't want to know, but I know that it's high. And just making it 2 years is a big deal. Making it 5 years is an even bigger deal. Wow. And so my whole world right now is how can I build memories in the bank from my daughter, so that if I don't die, that's fantastic. But if I do, then she remembers this was who Mom was in those last years. That's my life right now.
Wow, that is, you know what, and that's, I think for all of us, Eryn-Faye, that's good for us to know.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we don't think that.
Yeah.
It's all about that, you know, like building the successes, building my name, and in that we lose the memories, the time spent with people that love us and that we love. You know, that's just a good reminder for us to remember that too.
So true.
It's true. When we're faced with, I know we've all gone through it, when you're faced with death, yourself or someone else's that you love, everything else becomes so much less important.
Yeah, it is.
It gets things, the priorities get rearranged real quickly, don't they?
Yeah, I say to my friends all the time, I care so much more deeply about the things that matter, and there are so many things that don't even hit my radar, don't even hit my I care about this radar, you know. So it's been quite a change for me.
Yeah, amazing.
Wow.
Your faith through this, like, because I know that you had a really strong community, like your encouraging blog. I know on Facebook, and like everyone's like, love, hundreds, love. Like, it was like crazy.
Yeah.
What was that process like? You know, because when you're confronted with this, you know, God, I've got a daughter, I've got a husband. There's still more in me to give and to love. You know, I've been a Christ follower, like all those things. There's got to be an honest conversation or thing with God and about your faith.
For sure.
What's been happening in that way? Like,
For sure. Well, I think everybody always assumes when you go through crisis, you're going to be ticked at God. And I think I got that out of the way when my parents died. I really sorted through those sorts of questions. And I really know that there's a lot of ambiguity in life. And I really believe that that is where God reaches us, is when we don't have all the answers. We're in that kind of, Richard Rohr uses the term liminal space. You're betwixt and between. You've left what you know. You haven't yet gotten to the place that you're going yet. And that is where God shows up. That's where the magic happens. And so I really practice just resting in liminal space and just saying to God, okay, what do you have for me today? It was just bit by bit by bit by bit, tiny pieces at a time, and just choosing to courage and do those pieces that I felt led to do.
So what do you know to be true? What do you know to be true about yourself, about God, about family relationship? Like, just what are the truths that are coming out of all of this?
Yeah. I believe that God is present. Sometimes he's quiet. You know, there were a lot of times I fell asleep in my drug-induced stupor, you know, while I was desperately going to the throne and trying to listen to God. But he shows up. Yeah. He really honestly does. And I heard his voice so clearly through the experience. But I'm a real big, you know, give me a big goal, like let me do big steps. And God was really teaching me about the simplicity of rituals, that it's just the tiny little steps that he's calling us to do. So it's about listening and then about doing. And those were truths that I just got to practice over and over and over again during that past year.
And I'm hearing you talk about resting and being and the quietness, and yet also, because there don't have to be competing, there's also an urgency to your life that has shifted about your relationships and things like that. So it's both resting but urgent.
I am much more peaceful. I have a much better practice of just focusing on God, meditating every morning. That is one of the things that drives away anxiety for me. And I have to have that. That's a lifeline for
what
me
does that
right
look
now.
like when you say meditation?
So what I do personally, because I really felt like God led me to do it, is I listen to some monks singing. You know, they have this old ancient prayer written 2,000 years ago. And so I listen to that, and then I just pray in a very meditative way. There's several prayers that I have. The Lord's Prayer is one, Glory Be from the Catholic belief system is one, and I just pray through those prayers and go through that every morning. And it's a place of quieting my heart. It's a place of really anchoring into God. I always say to him, you know, I am grounded in your truth and I'm rooted in your love. And that is what I have to start off with every day. Otherwise I get frazzled, I get anxious, I get scared. And that has been phenomenal for me, phenomenally helpful.
Could you talk to us a little bit about how all of this weighed on the relationship, the marriage, like just the husband, like the husband-wife stuff?
Yeah. Well, we had gone through a real difficult patch in 2013, where we really kind of a lot of things shook out in our marriage, and we redefined some things in our marriage, and had some really hard, honest conversations. It'll be 20 years that we've been married in April.
Wow.
So that was about the 16, 17 year mark. And I think that the key to keeping our relationships alive is redefining them, because we grow and we change. And so Eric and I had that time in 2013. So when the cancer hit, we were totally on the same page.
Wow.
Like, it was tough. It was hard. We cried a lot. We got, you know, snippy with each other when that happened, but we were really, really, truly on the same page. Now, there were some ramifications to our relationship. There were some ramifications to our sex life because I had been in so much pain and trying to recover from the surgery that I was in. There were some ramifications to just our communication style because we loved to talk to each other late at night, and I would just fall asleep. Like I couldn't make it past 9 o'clock at night. You know, I remember distinctly this one time where he turned and he was telling me this story, and I was falling asleep, and he went, "Oh." And it just killed me. I was like, I'm not showing up for my husband. He needs me. He needs me to be able to listen to him and hear him. So there were, without a doubt, dark moments, but we just we dug deep and built on what we'd learned in 2013. And I mean, my husband's just crazy good. Crazy is. He's just amazing. I cannot say enough good things about him. Oh, gush about him.
Gushing about him.
You're just a perfect example. There's a phrase I always say to when I talk to young couples that storms can either cause you to separate and distance, or they force you to collide into each other.
I love that.
That's good.
You two collided back into each other and just hung on for dear life.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did.
Awesome.
How was it with your daughter? That's also there's a relationship with your husband, and then there's also as a mom to daughter going through this. That was probably really tough.
Yeah.
That was probably the hardest thing for me.
Wow.
Because I felt like I was failing her as a mom, because my whole world had been built around not putting my daughter through what I went through. I was 10 when my mom got sick the first time. And my daughter was 11 when I was diagnosed.
And you're just seeing yourself in
seeing
what
myself
she's
in
going
my
through.
kid. I'm seeing myself in my kid. And Eric and I made the decision that we were going to do it differently than my parents did. My parents kept it quiet and kept it hidden when my mom was sick. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that for my kid. I am going to be real. I'm going to be authentic. And so we sat her down and we talked to her. And we had the conversation, which was, that is hands down the worst thing you can tell your kid is mommy sick. It's the worst thing, especially when you don't know that you're going to live. You don't know that. You can't tell your kid it's going to be okay. You don't know.
You don't know.
Like, I don't want to lie to my kid and then have her be furious in counseling for years later. So we just really made a deal that she could talk at any point. She could ask questions. She could be insecure. She could be fearful. There was no expectation on how she was going to emotionally process it. We got her a therapist because we thought there would be lots of things that she would want to say that she wouldn't feel comfortable saying to my face. So we got her some help outside. And he, this is again where Eric just shone. There was one time where, because I have a colostomy, and that's just horrible, because you're wearing your poop on the outside of your body, essentially. And there was one time where I just had this meltdown, and I just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed, and Riley saw that, and she saw that, and she said to Eric, how is mommy going to make it when even just the colostomy is so much for her? And Eric was able to just step into that moment and again lean into the ambiguity. We don't know. But God is good.
Yes, He is.
God is faithful.
Yes, He is.
We are going to trust. We are going to walk this as best as we have the tools to walk it. And it's just been a series of those really, really tough conversations along the way.
One of the biggest things I know of is that through this, you had a really strong community. I don't know, again, we've talked about this on the show, but the sense of you don't have a community to help you through things. I don't know how people get through things.
And when you're in it, you can't find one. You have to have it already.
Right? Like you can't be like, I now need community.
Now I need to make friends.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. So we didn't know so many people liked us.
I love that.
You find out, I guess.
Eric is a writer. I'm a writer. So we did a lot of our communications via Facebook, and people just, they just swarmed. They just, behind the scenes on Facebook. And people were just desperate to know what they could do. I remember it was Eric's brilliant idea, and it was a way to connect Riley to community. And so he decided that bobbleheads, that's what he decided, because it was a way that Riley could engage, and it was on her level. And here she's collecting all these heroes for her mom. So he puts it on Facebook, and people start sending bobbleheads from all over the world. All over the world. I had one show up from China that someone had ordered in China.
So what do you mean by that? Like it's like Wonder Woman or something?
So like Wonder Woman,
Hillary Clinton,
just any strong women that are on TV or in the movies.
Xena.
Yes,
There
was,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
And so we had this collection,
cool.
and I have this beautiful curio cabinet that used to have my mother's antique teacup collection in it. No longer, it now has bobbleheads.
Far more important.
Yeah, exactly.
But Riley could anchor in on that, and more importantly, community members could anchor in. They were like, "There's something I can do," especially if they were long distance.
Right.
They could help.
Yeah.
They could make a meal, and so they were able to step in and help. And just the love that we received was just
amazing,
crazy cool.
Yeah.
Crazy cool.
Cheryl, you're tearing. What's going on?
I was good, y'all. I was good for all of our conversation and the relationship and what you learned in the truths.
Yeah.
I love all of that. It was when you talked about your daughter.
Yeah.
You know, and I think about the level of bravery that is needed to live well to this audience. The responsibility to educate as you go that God is still good.
Yeah.
That he's still faithful, that I still have joy, a level of it. I'm claiming my healing, like all of those things every day. You are this ambassador of hope for, yes, your husband and the community, but I'm just concerned about that particular one.
Yeah. I'm with you.
And when you spoke just about, because I felt that when you said, and she saw me. And I know how big that was for you because you are trying so hard to be this ambassador of hope. So that's just, as a mom, you know.
You know what I realized through this is I think one of the greatest gifts that we can give to our kids is resilience.
Yeah.
And the way we do that is we allow them to feel the impact of really, really tough stuff. Because if we protect them from that, they don't know how to rebound from it. Because rebounding from tough stuff is a skill set. It's not just something that naturally drops in our lap. And so I was really committed to letting her see there was a level of protection, given her age, there was a level of protection, but it wasn't 100% protection like my parents tried to do with me. Letting her see the tough stuff and then coaching her through as best as I had the capacity, as best as Eric had the capacity, as best as my aunt and uncle came, my sister came, they had the capacity to say, okay, this is how we walk through. This is how we bounce back. This is how we hunker down during times that just suck.
And you know what I just got from that? It's like you are pulling on the strength of God. You are calling on that strength of God, and he's downloading it. Yeah. But there's also this other side. Strength can be taught. Yeah. And you're teaching her from that strength you're getting from God how to be strong in the face of adversity. Yeah. Strength can be taught.
And
it's powerful.
And that is such a lesson for our viewers and all of us, because a lot of times it's more about protection. Yeah. We don't want anything. Sheltering. Yeah. We don't want them to be hurt.
Yeah, we don't want
them to be, soiled by the world and things. Well, the problem is that what we're seeing now is young people get older. Yeah. That's not helping them because
it's the least psychologists say it's the least resilient generation they've ever seen.
Really,
because they weren't allowed to fail. Right. They weren't. I say they as if I'm not part of it. Yeah. I think I'm a bit of resilience, but a lot of people who don't know how to fail and come back. Right. It's the pivoting. I was going this way. I'm going this way now.
Yeah. And they've got to have practice
and you just
time.
crumble and everything falls apart. And
that's right.
And a lot of churches teach incorrectly on this topic.
I agree.
Of pain, suffering, and all the great things that are going to happen to you, and all the terrible things that are going to happen to you.
You're
it's
right.
this dangerous teaching in some churches around that doesn't give
never
people
happen
doesn't give people any toolkits for bad things happening. I have a dad who is a long-term illness that will only get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
So like when you sit in a church service and they're talking about the victory of Jesus, like, yes,
Yeah.
when he dies,
Yeah.
but not before that.
Right.
Not before
Yeah.
that.
Right.
And so it's this incorrect teaching that then if you don't have the right tools, so if your daughter is protected too much from that pain, I would imagine then she wouldn't know
Yeah.
when these bad things happen, how to
Yeah.
and it sounds
Yeah.
like that was maybe part of your own journey with your own parents.
Yeah. Well, I didn't learn that till later in life because
Yeah.
they didn't give me the opportunity,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? And then I had to figure those things out on my own. But yeah, just speaking to your point about churches is that I find in the church when we read a Bible story, we skip from the beginning to the end. We miss the middle, right? And I think how we should read scripture is that we should read the beginning, the setup, the problem, and then go away and meditate on it for a while and really let that soak into our bones. And then we should go back and read the ending, because the good stuff happens in the middle, like I was saying earlier. So like Jonah in the belly of the fish, he had 3 days where he's hanging out in this fish.
Gross.
That had to have sucked.
Yeah, it sucked and it was gross.
But
And there was no guarantee at that point.
there was
Yeah,
no
no.
guarantee.
But
He thought he
exactly.
was a goner.
And
Yeah.
here's the thing about the middle. I love this conversation, by the way. Here's the thing about the middle. It's though that's what we glean.
That's the transformation
We
part.
are changed by
Yes.
the furnace and the 3 Hebrew boys. It's the middle.
Yes.
We're
Yes.
changed by what happened in the belly of the whale. We're changed by Job's journey of losing everything and still not cursing God. It's the middle that
That's
I
exactly
it.
love that.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So true. Yeah.
So you're saying read, get into the middle, and glean from that truth.
Just stop and think. How would that have been? When the children of Israel are marching around Jericho, how would it feel like for the first 6 days? Nothing's happening. You've got to be mocked by people on the top of the wall. And you're going, is God really going to show up? And that would have had to feel like an eternity to them.
Yeah.
Those middle parts are where God really shows us what we're made of.
Yeah.
And we have the strength to make the pivot, like you said earlier.
But in the same way, like with the community, if we don't know these stories, we
Yes.
can't rely on them when we need them. If we don't read the Bible for ourselves,
Right.
we have nothing in the toolkit to remember the 6 days walking around the wall, to remember the 3 days in the belly, to remember, to remember.
Yeah.
And that's where, certainly, many of us who grew up in faith, our parents were the ones teaching us
Yes.
these
Yes.
stories.
Yes.
But whether we had that or not, we have to remember them for ourselves. Because when you're in the crisis, you need the story, but you already have to have it in your back pocket. When you're in the crisis, you need the
very good point.
relationships in your
Yeah.
community. You need that solidity in your marriage. But you can't just build it at that moment.
right.
You already have to have it.
Got to hide that word
That's
in your
good.
heart. Yeah, love that.
Eryn-Faye, so much. I know that we're going to continue this conversation on our website because I think there's some coaching that you're going to do with us around the table. But
Okay.
you are such an inspiration. The emotion of it, because Chris and I have journeyed with you both, and so it's amazing and a miracle to see you here, looking beautiful, and your countenance and your spirit and your faith is so inspiring. I think you've left an indelible mark on us here around the table, and I know to our viewers as well. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Well, if you were moved by what we shared around the table, by what Eryn-Faye Fran shared, please connect with us on our website at seehearlove.com. Hello at See Hear Love. We would love to chat with you via email, pray for you. There's lots of information. I know that Eryn-Faye, there'll be some blog posts. We're going to be writing some thoughts too. This conversation doesn't end because I know it's an important one that we want you to think about. Go away after you've watched the show and think about what we shared and pray, meditate, and remember about the middle part. That's the good stuff.
Yeah.
Also, don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And we love you. We do this because we want our stories to be inspiring for you. And also, don't forget that you are seen, heard, and deeply loved by God. Bye-bye.